Locked disclaimer: this story is purely a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events is purely coincidental. This story contains emotional and mature themes intended for thoughtful reflection, not for judgment. Reader discretion is advised. It started with a slow drip, not just from the pipe under the kitchen sink, but from the rhythm of my life. Days blended together in beige tones, my husband buried in work, and me, a quiet shadow in the house we once dreamed of filling with laughter. Last Thursday morning, I noticed the puddle again. The pipe had been leaking for days now, leaving behind a musty smell and water stains on the cabinet wood. I mentioned it to my husband, Josh, over breakfast. He barely looked up from his phone. "I'll send David. He's good with stuff like this," he said between mouthfuls of toast. I knew David vaguely. They were college roommates, now occasional fishing buddies. He'd been at our wedding, tall and quiet in the background. I remembered his eyes more than his words, calm, but unreadable. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. There he was, David. A little older than I remembered, beard slightly thicker, his jeans worn from real work, not the office kind. He smiled politely, toolbox in hand. "Hey, Josh told me about the leak," he said. His voice was softer than expected. Not shy, but gentle. He walked in with the ease of someone used to fixing things. I led him to the kitchen, explaining the problem in awkward half-sentences. He nodded, crouched down, and got to work. I stood awkwardly nearby, unsure if I should offer coffee or just leave him alone. Something about his presence unsettled me, not in a fearful way, but like a long-forgotten memory trying to surface. As he worked, silence hung between us. Not uncomfortable, but curious. "Your house is nice," he finally said from under the sink. "Josh said you decorated it all." I nodded. "Yeah, he lets me make most of the choices." He smiled. "That's good. You've got taste." There was a pause. Just a compliment, I told myself. But the way he said it, with an appreciation that felt real, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in months. The leak wasn't fixed that day. He'd need to get a part and come back tomorrow. "No problem," I said too quickly. "Whenever you can." He looked at me then, not just at my face, but into it, if that makes sense. Like he noticed the tiredness beneath my smile. "Tomorrow then," he said, picking up his toolbox. "See you." As I closed the door, my heart felt unsteady. It wasn't love. It wasn't attraction. It was the unsettling feeling that something had just shifted, and I wasn't sure yet if it was inside the house or inside me. The next day, I found myself putting on mascara. Not much, just a light touch. It had been months since I bothered with makeup on an ordinary afternoon. I told myself it was because I was going out later, though I wasn't. David arrived around noon. This time, I had coffee ready. "Thought you might want some," I said, placing a mug on the counter. He looked surprised, but smiled. "Thanks. That's kind of you." He sipped it and got to work, pulling tools from his box like a surgeon preparing for a quiet operation. I sat at the table, pretending to read something on my phone, though I couldn't focus. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was thick. Like something unsaid was floating just above our heads. "Did you always do this kind of work?" I asked casually. He shook his head without looking up. "No. I was in finance for a while. Desk job. Burned out hard a few years back. Now I work with my hands. Feels more real." "Real," I echoed, more to myself than to him. He looked up briefly. "You ever feel like everything got too quiet? Like life shrank without you noticing?" I paused, caught off guard. "Yes," I said softly. His eyes lingered on mine for a second too long. Then he went back to work. We started talking more as he unscrewed fittings and dried out the cabinet. I told him about my work-from-home routine, how I started painting again, but hadn't finished anything in months. He told me about his dog, a mutt named Riley, who followed him like a shadow. We laughed about silly things, bad movies, the time he and Josh got lost during a hiking trip. The more he spoke, the more I noticed small things. The way he listened, really listened. How he never interrupted. How he looked at me when I spoke, like my words held weight. He didn't ask about Josh. I didn't bring him up either. At one point, I asked, have we met before? I mean, besides the wedding. He looked thoughtful. Yeah, a long time ago, I think. College party, maybe? Something about that made my chest tighten, like a forgotten photograph surfacing in a drawer. I couldn't place it, but the familiarity in his voice, the way he tilted his head, it stirred something. Eventually, the leak was fixed. He wiped his hands on a rag, tested the faucet, and stood. All done. I walked him to the door, feeling strangely reluctant to let him go. He looked at me, a question in his eyes that he didn't speak aloud. Thanks, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He nodded. Anytime. And then he left. The house felt emptier than before. Not because he was gone, but because something inside me had been stirred awake, something I wasn't ready to name. That night, sleep came in fragments. I lay next to Josh, his back turned to me as usual, the glow of his phone casting shifting shadows on the wall. I stared at the ceiling, trying to shake the strange electricity still clinging to my skin. David's voice echoed in my mind, you ever feel like life shrank without you noticing? The next morning, I found a reason to message him. Hey, just wanted to say thanks again. The leaks really fixed this time. Water flowing perfectly. I added a smiley face and deleted it. He replied a few hours later. Glad to hear it. You ever find that painting you started? I smiled at the screen longer than I should have. By the weekend, the memory started surfacing. Not in a rush, but like a piece of music drifting back after years of silence. There had been a college party, loud music, red cups, people spilling out onto the lawn. I was wearing a blue hoodie, standing in the kitchen, sipping something too sweet and pretending to enjoy myself. Josh hadn't arrived yet. I remember feeling bored, alone. Then a glance across the room. A guy standing near the fridge, talking with someone else, but looking directly at me. Those eyes. Calm. Studying. I remember wondering, why is he looking at me like that? Like I'm something more than just another girl in the room. I didn't go over to him. I don't think we spoke. But for a few moments, there had been a silent awareness. I felt it again now, like I was waking up into the memory, seeing it more clearly than before. Was that David? I wasn't sure until I went to Josh's Facebook page and scrolled way back through old photos, freshman year, Halloween parties, grainy dorm selfies. There he was, standing next to Josh at that same party, wearing the same shirt I remembered, holding a red cup. The same gaze. David. I sat back stunned. Had he remembered me all this time? Had he recognized me the other day and just not said it? Or was it a coincidence? A half-buried past brushing against the present in a cruelties? I thought of the way he had looked at me while fixing the sink, calm, curious, unflinching. The thought made me feel both exhilarated and guilty. I told myself it meant nothing. Just a harmless connection. Just an old memory. But all day I found myself distracted. Making tea and forgetting to drink it. Opening tabs and forgetting what I needed. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for longer than usual. My reflection looked the same. But something in my eyes had changed, like I was remembering a version of myself I thought had been erased. And deep down I knew, this story, whatever it was becoming, didn't start with a leak. It started a long time ago. With a look I had once forgotten. Sunday morning arrived with golden light pouring through the kitchen windows. I brewed coffee, the smell curling around the corners of the house like a memory. Josh had left early for a client meeting out of town. I didn't ask when he'd be back. He didn't offer. I sat by the window, sketchbook open, pencil resting against my fingers. For the first time in months, I wasn't staring at a blank page. My hand moved without thinking, the shape of a man crouched beneath a sink, soft eyes, steady hands. A soft knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there he was, David. He stood on the porch with a small brown paper bag and a sheepish smile. Found the part one should have used in the first place. Figured I'd drop it off. Just in case. I blinked. The sink's already fine though, he shrugged. Maybe I just wanted an excuse. My heart fluttered, not the kind of flutter that made you blush, but the kind that made your chest ache because you didn't know what to do with it. Come in, I said, stepping aside. We stood in the kitchen, the silence stretching but never breaking. He glanced at my sketchbook on the table. "You're drawing again?" "Trying to," I said. "Looks good," he murmured, eyes on the half-finished lines. "You always used to draw in college." I looked up. "You remember that?" He nodded. "You sat by the library window every Tuesday. Blue hoodie. Always with your headphones in. I thought you looked like you belonged in a different world." The memory slammed into me. I had worn a blue hoodie every week. I had drawn by that same window. He'd noticed. All those years ago, someone had seen me. Our eyes met, really met, and time folded in on itself. The space between us felt unbearably close and impossibly far. My breath caught in my throat. "You really remembered me?" I whispered. He smiled softly. "I never forgot." The air shifted. My pulse thundered. I reached for the coffee pot with trembling fingers. As I handed him a mug, his fingers brushed mine. It was the smallest touch, an accident, maybe, but it stopped the world. A second passed. Then two. Neither of us moved. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. But in that moment, everything changed. I pulled my hand back quickly, retreating behind the counter like it was a shield. "You should probably go," I said, not meeting his eyes. He nodded once. "Yeah, probably." He left without another word. The door closed. I stood there, staring at my own hand like it had betrayed me. My heart pounded against my ribs. I wasn't in love. But something inside me had woken up, and it was louder than my silence. David didn't come back after that day. No more casual drop-ins. No messages. Not even a like on the painting I quietly posted online after months of hiding my work. At first, I told myself I was relieved. It was a spark, nothing more. A moment of misplaced emotion in a quiet marriage. A heartbeat that didn't mean anything. But as the days passed, silence wrapped itself around me like a second skin. Josh was still busy. He left early, came home late. He kissed my cheek at dinner and scrolled through his emails at the table. We had conversations about bills and groceries, but never about us. On Thursday, a week after David's visit, I finally heard from him. "Hey, sorry for disappearing. I think I crossed a line. Didn't mean to make things complicated." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "You didn't." "It's okay." His reply came a minute later. "It doesn't feel okay." The ache that bloomed in my chest startled me. Why did it feel like something had ended before it even began? That night, I dreamed of the college library. Of sitting by the window, drawing quietly. And of a boy standing across the room, watching, too afraid to speak. I woke up with tears in my eyes. The next afternoon, I was out buying groceries when I saw him. David. In the parking lot, loading wood into the back of his truck. He didn't see me. I stood there for a moment, my heart racing, and then, without thinking, walked toward him. "David." He turned, startled. "Hey," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here. Can we talk?" I asked. He nodded. "Sure." We sat in the truck, the windows cracked just enough to let the summer air in. Neither of us spoke at first. "I remember you now," I said finally. "From college. From the library." He looked over at me. "Yeah." I nodded. "You were always there. Always quiet. I just never noticed how much you noticed me." He smiled sadly. "It was easier not to say anything. You always seemed just out of reach." There was a long pause. Then, softly, he said, "I think I've been in love with you since then." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't plan it. I never meant to feel anything when I came to fix that leak. But when I saw you again, it all came back. I stared out the window, the world spinning. "I'm married," I whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't say anything." But I couldn't keep lying to myself either. I turned to face him. "Why tell me now?" Because pretending not to care hurts more than being honest. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just sat there, in a parked truck, holding a truth I wasn't ready for. And for the first time in years, I realized my heart wasn't broken. It had simply been quiet too long. That evening, the house felt like it was holding its breath. I hadn't told Josh anything. Not about the truck, the confession, or the way David's words still echoed inside my chest like a song I couldn't turn off. Josh arrived home earlier than expected. I thought you had a dinner meeting, I said, keeping my voice steady. It got cancelled. He loosened his tie, dropped his keys on the counter, and kissed my cheek out of habit. I'm starving. I nodded. I'll heat something up. As I stirred leftovers on the stove, my hand trembled. I wasn't sure if I was hiding a secret or burying a part of myself that had already drifted too far. Halfway through dinner, Josh mentioned that David might stop by soon. I froze. Why? Said he left a small part here last time. Wants to grab it. You okay with that? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, of course. As if summoned by the words, the doorbell rang a few minutes later. Josh opened it. Hey man, perfect timing. We've got food if you're hungry. David stepped in. His eyes found mine instantly. I couldn't breathe. I'm good, he said politely. Just grabbing the connector piece I forgot in the cabinet. He walked into the kitchen, crouched under the sink. I stood like a statue, watching from across the room as Josh scrolled through Sports. All good. Thanks. As he walked toward the door, I followed him, slowly, carefully. In the hallway, just before the door, I paused. You didn't have to come, I said under my breath. He looked at me. His voice was barely a whisper. I needed to see you one last time. To remind myself I wasn't imagining it. He left. The door closed behind him. I stood there, fingers on the doorknob, my heart pounding like it belonged to someone else. Later that night, Josh and I lay in bed, backs turned away, like strangers sharing the same roof out of muscle memory. In the dark, I whispered, Do you ever miss us? There was a long pause. What do you mean? Us. Who we were. Who we used to be. Josh sighed. I guess. But we're still us, just different now. Different. That word pressed against my ribs like a stone. He fell asleep quickly. He always did. I stayed awake, staring into the ceiling's emptiness, feeling a tug between two truths. One was safe, quiet, and known. The other was wild, uncertain, and alive. I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I also didn't want to disappear inside myself again. The worst part wasn't the confusion. It was knowing that no matter what I chose, something or someone would be lost. Josh left for a work trip the next morning. A 3-day conference in Chicago. He kissed my forehead at the door, told me not to wait up, and wheeled his suitcase into the taxi without noticing how tightly I gripped my coffee mug. The silence after he left wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. I spent most of the day pacing the house. I opened my sketchbook, then closed it. I walked into the kitchen, stood by the sink David had fixed, and stared at the place he had crouched, remembering the warmth of his presence like a forgotten dream. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted David, Can we talk? His reply came instantly, I'll be there in 20. I didn't dress up. I didn't light candles or plan anything. I just sat in the living room, hands in my lap, heart knocking against my ribs. When the doorbell rang, I opened it slowly. David stood there in a dark green shirt, hair slightly tousled, eyes heavy with something he hadn't said yet. Hey, I said, voice shaking. Hey. He walked in. We didn't hug. We didn't sit far apart either. The couch creaked beneath the weight of everything we were trying not to say. I didn't ask you here for anything, I began. No decisions. No drama. I needed to speak to you. Without pretending anymore. He nodded slowly. Okay. I looked down at my hands. When you confessed how you felt, it didn't scare me. It broke something open in me. His breath caught, just slightly. I don't know what that means yet, I said honestly. I'm not going to lie, my marriage is quiet. It's been that way for a long time. And I've gotten used to feeling invisible. David said nothing, but his silence was filled with attention. I guess what scared me the most, I whispered, is how alive I felt when you looked at me. Like I existed again. Like someone saw me. His hand brushed against mine, not holding, just there. I never stopped seeing you, he said. Even back then. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. We didn't kiss. We didn't fall into each other. We just sat there, two people who had crossed some invisible emotional boundary, unsure how to return. I'm not going to be the reason something breaks, David said, standing up. But I won't pretend it didn't happen either. He walked toward the door. Before he left, He turned to me one last time. I didn't come here for you to choose me. I just came to remind you that your heart still works. And then he was gone. The house felt heavier after that. But for once, the weight didn't come from loneliness. It came from finally feeling something real. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the dark street and the dim orange glow of the streetlights. The same window I used to sit by in college, sketching strangers and pretending I had a plan. Back then, the world had felt wide open. Now, it felt like I'd been living inside a hallway with no doors. But David, he had cracked one open. The next morning, I wrote 2 letters. The first was for David. I didn't pour out my heart. I didn't make promises. I simply thanked him for remembering me when I had forgotten myself, for speaking a truth I'd buried too deep, for reminding me what it felt like to feel. I wrote, "You didn't fix a leak, David. You uncovered one. In the walls of my life. In the spaces where love used to live." I placed it in an envelope, but didn't send it. Not yet. The second letter was for Josh. That one was harder. I didn't blame him. I didn't accuse. I simply told the truth. That I was lonely. That our marriage had grown silent. That somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like I mattered. And that something needed to change, or we would both slowly disappear inside the life we thought was enough. I left it on his nightstand. When he returned from his trip 2 days later, I wasn't there to greet him. I was out walking in the park, breathing in fresh air that somehow smelled new. He didn't text. He didn't call. He waited. That night, we sat in the living room together, both of us quieter than usual. I knew he had read the letter. I saw it in the way his eyes avoided mine, in the way he sat straighter, as if bracing for something. "I didn't know you felt that way," he finally said. "I didn't know either," I replied. "Not until someone reminded me." There was a long silence. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "I don't want to be lost anymore." He reached for my hand. It felt unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. We didn't solve everything in that moment, but it was a start. A week later, I mailed the letter to David. Not because I wanted something from him, but because he deserved to know the truth, too. I never heard back. Maybe I never would. But that was okay, because I wasn't frozen anymore. I was moving, feeling, healing. Sometimes love isn't about who makes your heart race. Sometimes, it's about who reminds you that you still have one. Final line, closing reflection, he came to fix a leak. But what he really did was make my heart stop just long enough to start it again. 48.